But we do get a lot of people that come in, they're like, okay, so I dig this. I want to eat more and weigh less. I want to fix my metabolism, but I don't like lifting. I like running. I like cardio. I like doing cardio classes or Zumba or whatever it is. You know, we all have these things that we love. And sometimes people want to know if they can still do this process, if they can still work for them if they don't like to lift, or if, you know, like, do I have to lift? So we encourage everyone to try it out because of the fact that, like I say, your muscle mass is what is going to determine how high or low your metabolism is. So if you understand the reasoning behind it, then sometimes you understand that, yes, maybe if there's something that you really want, you may have to do something that you don't like, because your muscle mass that's making up like 2/3 of the total amount of calories that you're burning all day long. So when you don't have that, then only 1/3 is based on everything else. So the more muscle that you're losing, the lower your metabolism is going to be. I personally am not a huge cardio fan. I do some cardio on occasion. Like I say, it's not my thing. But when I talk about the hierarchy of like fat loss, if I'm like trying to accomplish something that requires cardio, I will do some on occasion. There's certain things that I like I love like kickboxing and stuff like that. But if you're the type of person that doesn't like doing any lifting and you want to know, can this lifestyle work for you? Yes. But you have to understand the reasons behind the lifting first and foremost before you make your decision. And then ultimately, if you decide to never pick up a weight or do any type of resistance training, then that's on you. Then you can still try to make this work in other ways. But first, the main reason why you want to understand why you do need to lift is because when you choose to do cardio only when it comes to fat loss, now again, we're not just talking about like what you're doing for fun or what's therapeutic or what like makes you feel good, gives you endorphins, all that good stuff. Like cardio is great for that. We know that if it's helping you to like deal with depression or something like that, or you need to get blood flow going for some other reason, that's one thing. But when it comes to using cardio only for fat loss, you have to understand that cardio only will simply make you a smaller version of what you already are. So what happens is that we think like, I'm going to do all this cardio and get ripped. Or like maybe the person that you're working out to, like for instance, if you work out to DVDs or your instructor or something, like maybe they're very muscular and ripped and you think, okay, if I do like Insanity, I'm going to look like Shaun T. Like he doesn't only do that. So it's important to understand that for you, when it comes to your fat loss journey, if you are only doing cardio, you are going to just become a smaller version of whatever you already are. That means that all of your same lumps and bumps will still be in the exact same areas. Like your problem areas will not go away. So everything will just become smaller and look exactly the same. So a lot of people get confused with that. They don't understand. They're like, well, I'm doing this workout and why don't I look like those people on the DVD? And that's because you're not doing everything that those people on the DVD do. You're just doing the thing that you like. Or same thing with, a person will like start running and they think that that's going to suddenly make them muscular and ripped. You can only become muscular by actually building muscle. So a lot of times when I talk about muscle tone, I say, if you build it, tone will come. If you build a muscle, then you can tone it. If you've done a lot of dieting, then you have probably lost some muscle mass. So you really, really will need to rebuild some of that lost muscle mass in order to get back to where you were. And every time you diet, if you're not doing any resistance training, you're losing more and more muscle, which means that you're going to look different every time. So that was number one that I covered in that blog post, was that cardio only just makes you a smaller version of whatever you already are. So if you're already fine with that, then that's cool. And I think that's why most of us were able to do it our first go round of fat loss. Maybe we just did cardio, we got smaller and we look great. But the more you do it, like I say, you're losing more muscle mass and things just start looking different. So number two is that like your age plus the excessive cardio means that you're like that muscle loss is happening faster every time. So that's the reason why when you were younger and you dieted, you didn't look so bad. You could just do cardio or you could just slash your calories. You could do whatever crazy thing and you still looked great because you had your muscle mass kind of peaked out right around like your early 20s. And then as you hit like 25, 30, 35, 40, you know, that muscle mass is on a constant decline. So you're not doing anything to save it, then it's going bye-bye. Like, that's just the way that it is. Your muscle is it's expensive for your body to keep muscle. So if you're not exercising and eating in a way that's going to keep it, it's one of the first things that your body gets rid of, because metabolically it's expensive, which is, like I said, that's what determines your metabolism. So if you are only doing cardio and you're getting older, you're doubling that. Like, you're amplifying how fast this muscle loss thing is happening. So if you're aging, a lot of people think that like lifting is just for like the kids and it's for like young people. It's more for the people that are getting older than it is for the younger people. So the older you get, lifting kind of becomes less of an option and more of a necessity, because it's not only going to give you, you know, increased muscle mass for the way that you look, but it's also going to lead to better quality of life, period. So because we're losing muscle mass, that's the reason why we start, our bones start aching and things like that. So you want to make sure that you're actually adding or holding on to as much as you can, because losing muscle that's aging you. Okay, so number one was cardio only leaves you with all the lumps and bumps in all the same areas, so you just become a smaller version of yourself. Number two is that when you're aging and you're losing muscle, that's really, you know, it's increasing the skinny fat look. If you're trying to retain that youthful look, then that's where lifting is going to come in. So again, it kind of stinks if you don't necessarily like it, but if the look that you're striving for, if you're trying to get back to something that you were before, you have to remember that you also had more muscle before. So that's something to keep in mind, because the aging and the losing muscle means you're aging faster. So muscle is going to give you that tight look of your youth. Number three is that you're going to, if you're only doing cardio, that means that you're losing weight, but not necessarily fat. So the weight is going to be a mixture of some fat and a lot of muscle, which means that the more muscle you lose, so because you already know you're gonna regain the weight because of the fact that your muscle mass is lower, so your metabolism is lower. So when you do finally lose the weight, you're not gonna be able to maintain it as much because now your maintenance is lower than it was before. When you regain, you gain back fat only, but because of that, when you're trying to get that toned look again and you start dieting and you start doing your cardio, that means that you're gonna have to go lower in your weight every year. So like a lot of times we have like this goal number in our head, and that's like, whenever I'm at this number, I look great. Well, only the first time. Every time you go back to that number, you're going to look different because you have less muscle mass. So that means in order to have that same look that you had, so say if like 150 was when you look great, the next time you get to 150, like if you gain 10 pounds and you go back down to 150 again, you're not going to look the same as you did at the old 150. So you'd have to actually go lower than 150 to look the same way you did at 150 before. And every time you'd have to do more and more and more. So each time you lose weight, you have to go lower in weight to look the same. So a lot of people don't understand that, and they think that as long as I get back to that weight, that's when I looked so great. You also had more muscle mass at that weight. So in order to look like that again, you're going to have to go lower in weight. And now the way to understand that is that your fat is lying on top of your muscle. So when you lose muscle and then you gain more fat, in order to see this muscle again, you have to remove a lot more layers of fat, and that's that weight. So you're going to have to dig a lot more before you can even see any resemblance of muscle. So it's really important to understand that if you have more muscle, then it doesn't take as much fat removal before you see it. You have less muscle, then you have to dig even deeper every time. So I always say it's like drilling for water in the desert. Like you have to like go long and hard before you actually see any resemblance of muscle. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't understand like why they're not getting muscle tone. And that's why, because they think they have a lot more muscle underneath their fat than they do. And when they start losing fat, especially if they're going too rapidly, then they're losing fat and muscle at the same time anyways. So it's really, you just keep going and you're at a constant loss. So I hope that makes sense. So number one was that if you're doing cardio only, you're just becoming a smaller version of your current self. So You're going to look exactly the same, but smaller. You're not necessarily going to like tighten and tone things. Number 2 is that aging plus excessive cardio and dieting is a recipe for muscle loss, which gives you the skinny fat look, where you're smaller, but nothing like you're not like tight or toned, or you don't have like that compact look. Number 3 is that when you are losing muscle, that means you have to go down and weigh each year. When you train for marathon, you have no muscle. Yes, that is very common. And so that's one of those things that you accept about that if that is just what you do. Like if you're a marathon runner, then you know that, or if you're in any type of endurance sport, you understand that when you're in season, you're going to lose muscle. And that's because muscle is metabolically expensive to maintain. Your body wants to be able to go faster, so it's getting rid of all the junk that it doesn't need, and your muscle gets categorized as junk. Another example of that is in basketball. Like my son played basketball all throughout high school, so he would try to go through bulks where he would like focus on building muscle in the off season. And this is what a lot of endurance athletes do. They focus on building muscle in their off season, because once they're in season, they're losing muscle. And they know that, and it's just kind of like, it just comes with the territory. So they just try to offset it in their off season because they understand the highs and lows of it. But when we don't understand that, and those of us who are just like constantly dieting, it's like we're in like this one continuous season of endurance. When you're only doing cardio, then you don't understand that you are eating away at your muscle. So it would be better if you took breaks to rebuild the muscle mass that you're losing. Number 4 is that your body adapts to cardio. So it's pretty much like what we're talking about with the endurance. Your body gets used to it, so therefore you're not making changes on it anymore, because once your body adapts, then it's no different. Like say you were running a mile, once your body gets used to that, in order for you to get those same results, you now have to run 2 miles. And then your body adapts to that, and then you have to run 3 miles. And you'll get to the point where you're running 10 miles, and to your body, it's no different than if you went to check the mail. It's just like, yeah, this is just what you do. There's no reason for me to adapt anymore. So it's important to know that, because if cardio is something that you love and you do still want to keep it in, then you have to figure out, okay, so then how can I include things that my body won't adapt to? Because of the fact that eventually that cardio is just going to be part of who you are. It's just part of your everyday thing. So even if you don't want to lift, then that's something that you have to understand, that means that either you're going to have to get used to the fact that one day you may be running for 5 hours a day to get the results that running 30 minutes a day is getting you now. That is something that you will have to understand and accept. That also means that maybe you want to consider trying HIIT type workouts or metabolic type workouts that maybe they're still cardio-ish to you, so they still give you that like sweat that you love, but they're going to help you to hold on to some of your muscle mass. Most people, that's the reason why. It's because they focus for so long on the cardio and on the dieting. So because they were doing so much cardio and doing so much dieting, they were losing so much muscle mass. And so we keep looking for like those like quick fix things that worked for us in the past. But it's like, okay, I'm 40, I'm 45, I'm 50. Why aren't these things working anymore? And that's why, because your metabolism is so much lower that even if you'd stayed the same weight the entire time, you're actually burning less calories at that weight than you should be. So when you gain and lose, gain and lose, gain and lose, gain and lose, you get to the point where whatever weight you are, you're actually burning less than somebody else that's at that same weight that never gained and lost. So that's why we don't understand that when we're getting older, that's what's happening. And it's because of the muscle mass. And a big key in rebuilding that is rebuilding the muscle mass. So that's actually a scary thing to do. But if you take time out to rebuild the muscle mass, you can build back up your TDEE, which is like the daily energy expenditure that you're doing. So the amount of calories that your body is burning, you can build it back up to what it should be for somebody of your weight. So that's one of the reasons why suddenly we start gaining, even though maybe we're eating the same amount that we were before, or we're doing the same type of workouts and things that we were doing before, or somebody else who's the exact same weight as us, like we're eating the same thing as them, but it's not working for us, and that's why. So I hope that helped answer the questions about lifting. Like I said, if you really, really don't want to lift, you know, we're all grown-ups here, not gonna make you, but understand how each thing, you know, works for or against you. If you know how cardio works and you still decide that you want to do it, then that's wonderful. Hopefully you will still decide to include some lifting too. Like maybe half and half, or depending on if you're looking for fat loss and you're like, okay, I don't mind cutting back my cardio, but I'm not going to give it up, then just insert some lifting there. But just remember the negative sides to doing only cardio so that you can actually have a healthy balance.